Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the podcast. Today, I wanted to invite Rachel on to the podcast to just explore what her business journey's been, and I think it's really, really good. And what we were sort of discussing a little bit before and a little bit after as well is that there's so many different aspects in business as a concept in regards to what trade and what your skill set is. But the mindset in which you actually go about creating it and growing and developing yourself as a business owner and then a business is actually very similar. So that's why I like to bring on other people from different walks of life in that respect. So I'm going to let Rachel explain a little bit more about what she does and how she does it. But thank you so much for coming back. I hope you did enjoy it. And I really, really appreciate the support lately. And I'll see you very, very soon.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Rachel, and I have an unusual profession. My profession, the title for my job is performance chef, and that's quite a confusing title, but simply explained, it means the food that I cook has an impact on an athlete's performance, hopefully a positive impact. That is the aim of the game. We work very closely with nutritionists, and nutritionists guide us about what they would like their individual athlete to eat on different days, because it depends on training, depends on competitions, depends on injuries, depends traveling, all these sort of things. And so the nutritionist will give you information, and it's in terms of macros and micros. So macros are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and micros are everything else: vitamins, minerals, anything else. And that's great. That's just written down on a piece of paper, but then the athlete can't eat that piece of paper. So what we do is we take that information, as I say, with my little catchy phrase, I say we take that information off the page and put it on a plate. So and because we're cooking for individuals, so not only am I a performance chef, but I'm a private chef. So I'm cooking for individuals. So when you're cooking for an individual or their family, you can say to them, what would you like to eat? And they will tell you what they would like to eat. And therefore you build what they want to eat around how the nutritionist wants them to eat it. It's the bridge between the two. It's the bridge between the food that somebody wants to eat and the food that they should, I'm doing the air quote now, should eat, and making that, keeping both sides, it's like a bridge between the two, keeping both sides of the bridge happy. So that's what I do. And then I realized that there was a lot of opportunity to do more of it. So I started a business and I train people to do it. And we cook for elite athletes all over the UK and in some parts of Europe. Mainly,
How exciting.
Yes.
Absolutely. No, it sounds very exciting. And I've got a couple of questions that I would like to ask, none of which I prepped, which is very exciting in the kind of normal podcast announcement now. But how do you get into this? How do you start doing this? I mean, obviously there's the I learn to cook, I become a chef part, I imagine at some point. But how do you kind of go from I'm a chef in a I guess a restaurant kitchen or hotel kitchen or etc. into like a performance element level, right? How do you transition from that?
Well, a good question. I didn't seek this out. I literally, people say, oh, I fell into it. Well, I did fall into it. I'd been working as a private chef. So this transition from working in hotels, I never really worked in restaurants. I only really worked in hotels. And in hotels, you do learn to do everything, because in a restaurant, it's fairly controlled. You're open for lunch and you're open for dinner. You put a menu in front of someone's face and say, choose off this. I mean, you do it a little bit more politely, but that's fundamentally what's happening. Somebody chooses off the menu, the chef cooks it, and it's sent out. The chef doesn't see who's eating, they don't see what they're eating, they don't see how they're eating it, they don't ask them if they've enjoyed it. It's a very kind of disjointed thing. But as soon as you work in a hotel, it's room service, which is all hours of the day and night, all sorts of lunacy, people ringing down 2 o'clock in the morning saying, can I have a birthday cake for 40 people? That's happened to me. Or you just, complete and utter chaos. There's no control. There's a dining room where there is a menu that you put in front of someone's face and say, choose off this, politely. But the rest of the hotel is just everyone ordering everything they want, all hours of the day and night. So that really concentrates your mind that anything can happen at any time. And I've mostly worked in really big hotels where that's just normal, absolutely normal, and you're just not surprised by anything. So the transition from hotel chef to private chef is a huge transition, because it's about talking to people, it's about interacting with people, it's about feedback, and chefs can be very bad at receiving feedback. And so you have to learn feedback's a good thing. Being told that somebody doesn't like something, that's a good thing. That's information to work with. That is not, I'm going to blow my top, I'm going to call everyone an idiot, I'm going to stamp around. It's like, no, great, I'm really pleased. Well, I'm not pleased you didn't like that, but I'm pleased you gave me the information that you didn't like it. How do we change that? How do we move forward from here? Do you trust me to cook it again for you and do it with more garlic, less garlic, whatever, the thing that you wanted? Well, let's do it again. So that's a huge transition. And so I had been private chef for something like 12, 15 years. I don't know, I've lost count. Working lots of different places, lots of different clients, amazing experiences, very hard work, sometimes very difficult clients who are very difficult to please. Some people who are unpleasable, who set out to be unpleasable. That's it. It's just, no, from the start, that's how it's going to be. Anyway, and then as a private chef, and also I've been a private chef since like the dawn, not the dawn of the industry, but for 25 years. So that's a long time. There are a lot of people now who say they've been private chefs, and they've been private chefs for 2 years, 3 years. Okay, great. You've got a bit of experience, but also you haven't worked for people who are younger than you, much older than you, a completely different language, a completely different culture. And without meaning to blow my own trumpet, I've worked in all sorts of environments for all sorts of people. And so you're just like completely open to anything, totally unjudgmental. There's no point being judgmental. Everyone lives their life in a completely different way. You see it all as a private chef. You see everything that goes on in a family's household. So you are really, and not even an insider, you're in the same physical space as the family all of your working hours. And so you see everything, and yet you can't get involved. You can't think you're friends because you're not friends. You just have to have a really strong, open, professional, friendly relationship, but never cross that line and think that you're friends, because you're not. And so
that must be really hard, no?
It is.
Like, because to me, that must, when you were talking about it and when you talked about it previously, because we've obviously had lots of conversations before about that, that must be one of the hardest parts of your job, right? Because, and it's not even necessarily like, oh, you're seeing abuse in the family, or it's not even that side of it. Maybe that does exist, I don't know. But there must be a part of it that's like, I want to be involved here, right? Like, you as a person, that must be very difficult, no?
No, because if you do cross the line, you can never come back again.
Okay.
If somebody, because, in families, there are always arguments. Like, what, if somebody discovers their car keys are in the washing machine in the pocket of their jeans, and the washing machine's on a 2-hour program, that's going to happen. And rich or poor, that happens. Organized, disorganized, that happens. Intelligent, less intelligent, all of that happens. That's just normal life. So of course, one person will scream at the other, you put my car keys in the, it's just, we've all had those conversations, we've all had those arguments. And if somebody says, oh, so-and-so's an idiot, what do you think? How do you answer that? How do you answer that and still be friends with well, not friends, but how do you answer that and still be on a par with everybody? You can't. You can't have favorites. You can't. I mean, you can chat to people and have a laugh with people, and maybe one person in the family you'll talk about politics with, another person in the family you'll talk about fashion with, another person in the family you'll talk about this or that with, but you can't make it obvious that you far prefer this person to that person, or you really don't like that person. And also, then if you start thinking like that, then your working life is just going to be horrible, because you're going to be like, oh, here he is again, he's going to ask me something stupid. And if you're just like, oh no, you treat them all in a kind of nice, open, chatty way, and sometimes somebody will wind you up, but you can't think, oh, they're going to wind me up again, because then you just don't like dealing with that person at all. You just got to be like, well, they were having a bad day, I have bad days, we all have bad days. The more open you are and accepting of everybody, just the easier it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think it's one of those things whenever you work with anyone, I think the key point there is whenever you do work with anyone, it's important to, especially if it's a professional relationship, try not to let your emotions or let your specific feelings or opinions of that person necessarily cloud your judgment or get in the way of you doing a job, right? Like, you can be palsy with your clients, and I would feel I have a good relationship with my clients, but I also still appreciate they are my client. Right? At the end of the day, that's what they are. That's the relationship we have, right? Like, yes, I'm friendly. Yes, we can talk, etc., etc., etc. But when push comes to shove, that they are my client. At the end of the day, I'm providing them a service, right?
Exactly. And if you are in their house day after day after day after day, not just like one off, but get to know them really well, see all their moods. They see your moods too. Even though you're being professional, sometimes something horrible has happened, and even though you're being professional, your mood is not depressed, but down. Your mood is down, and you're putting your professional self on top of that. And other days, something else will have gone in your life really fabulously well, and your mood will be elevated, but you'll still be being your professional self. But so they do see you in your moods, and you see them in their moods as well. So it is really important to not get dragged into anything. And if ever they say to you, what do you think? You say, well, I'm here to cook, not here to think. They realize they can't play you, and once they realize they can't play you, and that you are going to be like a blank canvas for all of them, and they can throw stuff at you, and you're not going to interact, you're not going to get angry by it, you're not going to get elated by it. It's just like, well, you've said that to me, and I'm here and I'm professional. It's not about your emotions.
Yeah, and I think you have to have some level of, like what you're talking about there, is some level of thick skin, or some way of not letting it necessarily affect you, or not taking it personally, so to speak, right? I think that's the main thing, and I think it's about understanding and having the mindset or the skill set to be in the position where you can detach yourself from work in any way, right? Like, whether in your case, perhaps you're working as a chef and you're in people's houses, etc., but when you go home to your house, that's your place to not think about that, right? And I think there's a lot of a misconception, especially when you work for yourself, where you, number one, are available all the time, right? Which if you don't set those boundaries with your clients, or I work one-to-one with business owners, and a couple of weeks ago I had a lovely lady who I'm working with who had that exact problem. Was we were like, she was like, I don't know how to set those boundaries, or those boundaries are not being set, so it becomes very difficult, and etc., right? So you can kind of run into those issues as well. But I mean, I think, the really interesting point for me, and the reason why I want to ask it, is because you also recruit chefs. correct me if I'm wrong here, but you also recruit chefs. So how do you sort of go about that process? Because I think the most, for me on the podcast, we could sit here and talk about your career and some of the struggles with it and etc. But I don't think that's going to be as valuable to other people listening. So I think for me the main value there is you as a leader. How do you go about recruiting, and how do you go about and how did you go about, like, was there a point where it was just you as the company, or have you always kind of wanted it to be, or always had it as you are recruiting chefs to be a private chef for your clients?
Okay, well, I will answer both of those questions. Which question would you like me to address first?
Let's go with, was it always you first, and then we'll build on.
Okay, well, the reason I started a company was because there was more work than I could do myself. And also, this might sound arrogant, I don't mean it as such, but I have a very unusual set of skills and a very unusual database in my head. And I don't have children, and I'm quite happy with that setup. But if I die, when I die, all of that knowledge will die with me. And, I don't want people to be going around reinventing the wheel and struggling. I can teach people. You see, that's always why I think it's edges into being arrogant. But I do have knowledge, and I'm happy to share it. So therefore I teach and train people, because I don't want all the mistakes that I've made and all the things that I've learned. I don't want other people to have to make all those mistakes and go through all that. Not even self-doubt. I mean, it's just, I can train someone to go from the knowledge. Let's start the other way around. The knowledge and the skills and the experience I gained in 10 years, I can put into someone's head in 2 or 3 weeks. It's really hard for them and for me, because I say to them, right, you've got to be on it. You've got to be on it, because I'm going to download a massive amount of information to you today. You've got to be on it. If it's too much, you say, and we'll slow down. But it's a huge channel of information. Boom. And I don't go faster than they can take it, but I have learned a lot, and mostly, in fact, almost exclusively by my own mistakes. And I can make people good and strong and confident and happy doing what I believe is a great job, without them going through all the pitfalls, all the mistakes, all the things, blah 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 blah. And occasionally I'll be in an environment where there are a lot of other private chefs, which is usually like a ski resort or somewhere on the Mediterranean, where there are a lot of big houses, big boats. And you'll see people who are obviously private chefs, and they don't know how to go around a supermarket. They don't know how to write a shopping list. They don't know how to do any of these things. And you're like, man, you're making it so hard for yourself. So hard. The job is quite hard, but there's, like, every single time you do something, you think to yourself, can I do this better? Can I do it quicker? Can I get more information out of this? Can I give more information? Can I explain to the client what I need? Not like sitting them down like it's a classroom, like, right, I need this, and this. But explain to them subtly, like, the more information you give me, the better I can plan, the better I can prepare, the better service I can give to you. And always tell me anything, like, not personal stuff, but like, oh, I think a friend might be coming in tonight. I think they're changing their plans. I think they're flying the day earlier, not a day later. So I think it might be one more for dinner tonight. It's like, great, thank you for telling me, because I'd rather be told this kind of iffy, but this kind of semi-helpful information than you sit down at dinner and there's suddenly somebody else just hanging about, and you think, oh, am I laying another table? Am I laying another setting? Am I cooking? Am I trying to make this food into more food? Like anything, or just, all information is absolutely golden. And you always say to the client, whenever they tell you anything, thank you for telling me. Even if it's like 5 minutes before they're sitting down for dinner, thank you. So they know you're not going to lose it, that you're going to embrace it, and just whatever information you give me, I want it. I'll never lose my temper. I'll always value it and say thank you. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for telling me you've become a vegan since lunchtime. Thank you for telling me. That does happen.
I see parallels in a lot of what I do as well. There's 1,000 different things that could go on in a video production. There's, and it rains when it's not meant to. There's something wrong with the build process if you're filming a build process, for example. I had this exact scenario happen last week where the builders who we expected, they couldn't come, or they were late, or then there was issues with the parts or the survey, or someone made a mistake somewhere, right? I'm not pointing fingers, but that's the reality, right? And it was like, right, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. So we're now going to cut this day short, which is not ideal, but that's what happens in life. And now we're going to try and resolve it, right? So I think a lot of what you're talking about there is about, in general, you need to be transparent with your client, but also your client in any context, not even necessarily yours or mine, needs to be transparent with what's happening for you as well, because it's a partnership. That's the difference, I think, between an employee and an employer. In some ways, that is a partnership as well, but it's slightly different. I think there's a different level of balance, in my opinion, right? And maybe that can lead on to the next part, which I wanted to cover briefly, which was how do you go about recruitment? But I'll let you finish the previous point you were making. But
knowledge is power, and people who don't have a practical, planny job, I don't know what goes on in people's minds. I think people think that because you're a chef, you can just make any food out of 0 ingredients in 20 minutes. I think that's what they think. That somehow going to, college, becoming a chef, doing all those years in hotels, somehow you can just it just comes out of your fingertips. And it's like, no, it's not like that. You need to give me information. And you don't say it like this, but you encourage it. The more information you give me, the better I will serve you. And it's not me being spiteful that if you let me know 10 minutes beforehand, it's going to be horrible. It's like, that's the best I can do. If you let me know of changes 10 minutes beforehand, then I can accommodate it. It won't be as good as even if you let me know an hour beforehand. And that's not spite. That's physically the maximum ability that I've got in the circumstances. The more you give me, the better I will be able to do what you ask me to do. So yes, going on to, if that answers that question, go on to a recruit.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
You and me will start chatting and we won't answer any of our questions. And it'd be nice, but anyone who's listening to it will be like, oh my God, these people are rambling. So recruiting, I recruit a lot. I train a lot. I'd rather, you see, I don't think you can train personality. You can't train aptitude. Training skills, I think, is fairly easy. If someone's in any way practical, I think it's fairly easy to train them to be a chef. It's hard to train people to taste. That is difficult. Even chefs, it's hard to train chefs to taste. But I think if you've got someone who's not got a massive ego, who's open to feedback, which I think is probably the same thing anyway. Someone who, if I say a people pleaser, I don't mean that as an insult. I mean someone who is not a perfectionist, because perfectionists will just drive you mad all day long. I used to be a quasi-perfectionist and it's not pleasant for anybody. But someone who really wants their work to be enjoyed and wants to see people happy. That's a better way of saying a people pleaser, because you think of people pleasers as doormats who just say yes to anything. I don't mean that. I mean someone who likes to see their work being consumed is maybe the wrong word. Likes to see the end result of their work.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you can be a people pleaser without having to say yes all the time, right? Like in my line of work, for example, a client will say, "Can we do this?" And I will go, of course we can do this, but I would recommend that we don't, and here's why I recommend we don't, because it might be a bad idea, right? We can take the essence of what they want to do with that idea, but we can push it in what is, from a technical aspect, probably a better direction. And I'm not saying that because I disregard their opinion, or I'm not saying that because your opinion or your idea is bad. No, it brings the question of, like, you brought me in as the professional to do a professional job and bring in my experience, bring in my knowledge, bring in my understanding. So you need to also be willing to be open to having that dialogue and being able to come to a compromise. And that's why I think that, I mean, let me ask you, what do you feel the difference is between an employer and an employee and a client and a service provider?
I would say, because for many years I was an employee. I worked for an individual, and it was an employee-employer relationship. And now I train people to basically fulfill that role. They don't call them the boss, they call them the client, and the chef is the chef. I don't think that dynamic is too different, because I'm training people to do it in a specific way, in a specific framework, with their own personality, because you can't make them copy your personality and do it in your personality, because that will just break, and that will break really fast. They need to do it in their own personality, in their own style, but within your framework. And we do it like this because all of our chefs, normally, if you are a private chef, you work 52 weeks a year. And if you get paid overtime, well, I'll tell you one job. I had worked for someone for 8 months, and it was the year end. And in that time, my hours had been 10 months' work in 8 months of working.
Oh.
And that, yeah. So you don't get any time off, you don't get any time to breathe, you don't get anything. But the way we work as a system, so that because everyone is doing it to the same standard, in the same format, with their own personality and with their own style, that chefs are interchangeable. So if somebody needs to have a week off, or if somebody needs to have a couple of days off, then that's fine. Another chef will go in, say hello to the client. The client will feel that, situation normal, like, one policeman and the next policeman. It's like they're all doing it. You're going to get the same standard of service. They'll be doing it as different individuals, because we're all different individuals. But if you go up to a policeman, for example, or an AA man, or the BT guy or woman, when they come round, what's going to happen. They're interchangeable. They're different individuals, but their skill set is
so the nuances might be slightly different, but the core service is going to be the same. And I think that's important. And I think it's interesting to hear that, because I think sometimes, especially when you're in business, especially with business owners, there's a misconception that I heard when I was still like an employee, thinking about becoming a business owner and on my self-employed journey, where it's easy, or it's easier, and it's etc. But I think, to be honest, and what I try to do in my content is to talk about the fact that it's actually the opposite of what you think it's going to be. Right? You think it's going to be easier, you have more control, etc. And all these things are true, but you also not a lot of people anyway that I found, talk about the fact that you're actually working a lot more than you've ever done in your life, but also you are working harder and smarter as well.
I think it's completely different. And you're saying this about setting boundaries. This whole pandemic schmozzle, that people are now working from home, and they're like, there's no differentiation between home life and work life, because I work in the dining room, and if they're lucky enough to have a dining room, or I work in the cupboard under the stairs,
or in the shed out the back, or in the spare bedroom, or in the office, or wherever.
Exactly. Exactly. And my partner's working the dining room too. They're on Zoom calls arguing with people in Japan, or all these sort of things going on. And they can't separate work life from home life. And it's like, well, try having a business. Also, try having a business. So I have built this. Let's unpack that a bit. Let's go back a bit. Sorry, ideas are bouncing around in my head. So I think that I am quite good at what I do because it kind of naturally suits my personality. And also it brings out the parts of my personality that I like, because there are parts of my personality which are quite undisciplined, quite kind of, idioty. And because I love the process of cooking, particularly cooking a completed meal. So when you work in a hotel, you are just cooking, the orders come in and you're cooking, this and that. It's not as though you're cooking a whole thing that one person or a family is going to enjoy, and they're going to give you some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. And you can then build on that knowledge and refine the process. In a hotel kitchen, it's, for me, there's less, I want to say intimacy, I don't know if that's the right word, but there's less of a chain of what you do. You get the order, you cook, you put it on the pass, it gets taken away, you don't know what happens after that. Whereas when you cook for an individual, you see their face, you hear their comments, and I prefer that. That to me is completion. Cooking the food and putting it on the pass, somebody taking it away, it disappears into the dining room. You don't even see the empty plate or the plate with bits left on it come back. You don't see any of that. To me, that's an incomplete process. And I was never really happy doing that. I enjoyed it because I enjoyed the cooking and the organising and the learning in that environment. I enjoyed that. But now that I can see it through to the finish, I so much more prefer that. I can't explain. It would almost be, I guess, like if you were a ballerina dancing on a stage, you'd like there to be an audience to get the feedback. Something like that. Now I know what this means to people, good or bad. I know what this means.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have that, because otherwise you just don't know whether you did a good job, and you don't know whether you did a bad job. You don't know how you can get better. You don't know what you can do better, because it's just, there's nothing there, right? There's nothing to help you understand how well you did.
Well, there is a system of Michelin stars and AA rosettes and all of that. And that, to me, I don't want to poo-poo it or diminish anybody who has put decades of their life into getting a Michelin star and then that's not the sort of accreditation I am seeking. I am not cooking for that type of accreditation. I am cooking to nurture, to I don't know, to share the very essence of life, to share food as like the ultimate nourishment. Like, without food, there's death. It's to bring joy and happiness and completeness to someone's existence. I mean, that just sounds like massively overblown, but that's what food is.
Yeah, I think what a lot of what you talk about there, it comes down to job fulfillment, right? Like, and the kind of feedback and the reasons why you do it, right? There's a lot of things we're talking about there, and I think when you talked about like the Michelin star aspect, that I don't know whether this is correct, but I would say that's closer to like the academia side of cooking or chefing or being a chef, right? It's the more, I guess, like the, I've gone to uni and I've got this place, or I've got this degree, or I've got this, academia
Yeah,
thing.
I guess you're right. It is making it, to me, that's not what food is. Food is not about,
You want to see the joy on someone's face. You want to see the reaction when they taste how amazing it is, and etc. So those what I would describe as more humanistic elements. For me, I don't really care as much about, oh wow, I could have finished a uni degree in filmmaking. Great, fab. Over me getting a video feedback from a client saying I absolutely love this piece. It's amazing. It made me cry. It so on, so on, so on, so on. Right? Because that to me, no matter how much they're paying me, right? Like let's say I have a lower budget project, medium budget project, and a large project, right? The reason why I take all three is because, to be honest, the videos in some cases that are actually lower budget have more of the business owner's heart and soul in than a larger amount of money, right? Obviously, from a financial growth business side, you want more of the bigger stuff, right? Of course you do. But in regards to actually the fulfillment aspect of like from a human to human, what you've actually done for that business, for me, a lot of the time, working with smaller business owners and etc., and working with local, and that's why I like to work with local as much as I humanly can, is that fulfillment level, because you are on the ground, your ground level, really helping these business owners really showcase, in my case anyway, really showcase their baby, basically. You're helping showcase what they've put heart, blood, sweat, tears, sleepless nights, so on, so on, so on, so on, into.
Also, like, I think, it's interesting that your profession and my profession aren't that dissimilar. Yours is the marriage of an art and a science. Mine is the marriage of an art and a science. And yours, you're keeping your clients happy. I'm keeping my clients happy. Endeavoring to keep my clients happy. But it's when you get to know a client well, and they start to, if I say trust you, I don't know how better to put it, and they start to come up with their ideas and their things, and they know that you're not going to laugh at them, and you say, okay, this is outside my field of expertise, but I know how to make I don't know, say if somebody wanted jam roly-poly, but not made with jam, made with mango chutney. And you think, okay, why not? I'm not going to laugh at you. Let's do it. Why not? And you make it, and it could be the most amazing thing you've ever tasted yourself, or it could be absolutely revolting and the client could love it. But it's just like, wow, now I see, that's the great thing for me about working with clients, is that my own head can only come up with the things that my own head can come up with. Even if I'm eating out in different places or talking to friends or whatever, my brain can only do what my brain can do. Somebody else, like a child of 6, can say, I'd like a Colin the Caterpillar cake, but with a sweet and sour sauce. I don't know. Just being ridiculous. But, and you'd be like, right, you are. You sure? Yep, you sure? Right, okay, let's do it. And they can come up with things that I cannot imagine. And that then is like, oh, brain goes, oh, we're going to have to do some rewiring in here. And then that's, to me, one of the most magical things of it, because just because you can't cook or you're not interested in cooking doesn't mean to say you can't have great ideas about food.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's one of those things where, that's why surrounding yourself with creative people, in my case perhaps, or yourself, other chefs and etc., is really beneficial, because you will only think of it this way, right? Because of the way you do it and how you do it. But then someone else will go, have you thought about doing it this way? And then you'll go, oh my God, that's an amazing idea. Let's do it. Right?
That is the problem. Part of being trained to be a chef is you are indoctrinated that there is this one way of doing it. This is the way it is done. This is the classical way. This is the way it must be done. This is the way. And, by doing this, you are a chef. If you do it the other way, the way that, the untrained people do it. Well, you've lost your right to be, well, that's dirty, that's slovenly. You must do it the chef way. And it's just like, and you must use proper chefy ingredients, and you must do this. And it's like, well, actually, no, like if somebody can make something really, really amazing with salad cream and it blows my mind, then I'm not going to be stubbing like, oh, and it's made with salad cream. I'd be like, right on, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things like in my industry a lot we talk about you need to understand the rules to be able to break them. And I think sometimes there's especially if you like went to film college and you learnt it the proper way and you learnt it the traditional way. I'm not mocking anyone who has, but it's one of those things where you're sometimes, because of the way you learnt it, you're very, very unlikely or find it very difficult to be in a position where you want to really break those rules and question what's possible and build those. But if you're in a situation, for example, where a client comes to me and says, like, we've got this problem or we've got this idea, and your job is to help it become reality, you don't have the chance or the time to think, oh, actually, I can't do that because I haven't been given a textbook on how to do this, right? You develop a mindset which is, okay, this is what the client wants, and this is where we currently are. How on earth are we going to get from here to here?
Yeah, I do a lot of this. And some people call this, well, let's just backtrack. I think the better educated you are, the more you are indoctrinated into the classic way of doing it, the formal way of doing it, the proper way of doing it, the harder it is to like be like an innocent and just like mess it up, break the rules, make the rules that you don't know what the rules are, just like fix it with gaffer tape, use a cigarette lighter as a lighting device, because you just like, who cares? You don't know any better, you don't know any difference, whatever. And the more you are like, no, we've got to have the light like this and we've got to have the thing like that, then the harder it is to imagine a solution. And yet, of course, necessity is the mother of all solutions. And you find yourself up against the wall. Today, for example, we went through for breakfast 36 eggs. Fine, fair enough. And not a big family. 36 eggs went through. And then they say, oh, right, and can you make me a cake? Right, well, I've got 1 egg left. How am I going to do that? Well, I did it. But if you just say to me, can you make me a cake with 1 egg? I'll be like, well, I really don't want to. But when you have to, then you do.
You go, what if I replace this with this, and how would this work? Yada 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 yada. You have that problem-solving mindset, exactly. I think it's really important, especially when you work with clients, because whether it's them, whether it's their client, whether it's whoever it is going to throw a spanner in the works. Right? That's going to happen. It's a matter of when, not a matter of if. Using my example a little bit from earlier. We had this plan to build this thing today. Actually, we can't build this thing because of X, Y, Z reason. Right, okay, so my job's now changed. I've done nothing that I shouldn't have done. I've showed up on time, done what I meant to do, yada, 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 but my job is still changed. Because other factors involved and other moving pieces in that project can't move forward for whatever reason. Okay. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I react to that situation? How do I fix that situation? How do I resolve that situation for my client? That doesn't mean I can fix it on that day. It means how am I now, because that will, in some ways, that will cause, and it did, has caused a double booking somewhere, right? For example, how do I resolve that issue for both clients and keep both clients happy, right? And that's part of the issue and the part of the thing that you would run into as a business owner. And I think part of the benefit of going to someone or being in a position where you have a network of creatives, in my case, or a network of chefs, in your case, you have more people that can operate and do the similar or the same job as you and be able to, quote unquote, bail you out of those situations if needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually that just touched on me. I am a terrible, terrible rambler, as I'm sure you know, but that you just touching on that reminded me that talking about work-life balance and people are working from home, trouble setting boundaries, all these sort of things. When you do a job that brings to the fore all of your parts of your personality that you most enjoy, then and then double down on that by building a business around that, then it's actually, for me, work is a huge amount of fun. My mother, I went to see my mother because it was her birthday a couple of days ago, and she's always asked me, when are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? Like, why would you retire? I mean, slow down, yes, but if you're doing something that you genuinely love, that is, it's more than love. It is, it's like a violinist, you know, with the bow, and they just, everything vibrates just the right way, and it just, the music is just seamless, and it's, you know, lovely. Even if you don't like violins, it's just all, everything just chimes, everything is vibrating, everything is just working. If that's what your job, your business brings to you, then why do you stop? You stop because your body's, you know, cease to work. It's just like, this is the work to me is more fun than fun. I do have to remember to stop doing it and I spend a lot of time with friends who have businesses themselves, and we talk about different things, like, because even within the business, we are very supportive within the business, but there are some times I want to talk to people outside the business, like quite a lot of times I want to talk about, because sometimes you can't see it for yourself and you're in your own bubble, and you want feedback that's different, and how other people have solved issues, what other issues other people are having. And your friends who've got businesses, they say, well, I'm having a problem with this. You say, well, my accountant said I could do it like that. Maybe you should have a word with my accountant. So if you can do it like that, la 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 la. But no, I love what I do. So limiting it, doing less of it, like week by week, like in the course of a week, doing fewer hours. It's like, but I love it. I really love it. It's the thing that I'm all sparky, I'm all alive. This is like, woohoo! This is the best thing. But you know, and also the idea of thought of retiring, like, oh, okay, I've got to 60, I've got enough money, I'm going to stop working. But why would I stop? It's
Yeah, it comes down to the question of, do you want to, right? Like, yeah, sure, you have the option to, right? But that's then a choice. You're then making a choice to work then, right? And I think there's a lot of people who don't necessarily understand that, especially people who work for their own business, they don't want to stop, right? Like, you know, there's a misconception, especially if you're an employee, where you work your whole life, you get to 60, and then you can start living your life, right? Like, I think for me, why don't you do something, create something, grow something, whatever you want to call it, so that you can have the freedom to live your life the way you want to, on your own terms, by building your own thing, right? Because then you won't need to. You won't need to like live for the weekend, or you won't need to be in a position where I need to wait until I'm 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever it is, to be in a position where I can actually do what I love to do, or do what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely and utterly agree. But I'm the sort of person that I could have had many different types of career. I could have done something really highly profitable, like highly remunerated, such as being an actuary or something like that, and I would be earning a fortune. Would I be happy? I think that would be highly unlikely. And I'm a problem solver. Having a business, making it profitable, growing it, that is the biggest, best problem you will ever. Well, I'm not a parent. If you're a parent, then probably raising your child to be, 18, 21, whenever you think that they stop being, when you stop.
I don't think they ever do.
No, but,
right?
no, but
to an extent,
when they are
more mature and more kind of on their own, it's kind of up to them at that point, kind of situation.
Exactly. Then that is a very big puzzle to solve, but that was not a puzzle I was ever interested in getting involved with. So to have a business, and I suppose also the business is more important to me because it is my legacy. Training people, building something, handing that on to somebody is my legacy. And we are doing what the business that I started and helped to run is, we are doing something that nobody else in the world, to my knowledge, is doing. And we are preparing to formalize the training of what we do, because, as I always say, the Wright brothers, for example, the manned flight, nobody could qualify the Wright brothers to be aeronautical engineers. Nobody's sitting there, very good, yeah, can you do this test, can you do that test, well done, we're going to give you a degree in aeronautical engineering. Because
the problem was they invented it, and the problem was the test which they would then, or they or their predecessor would make, that would qualify them to be so, didn't exist.
Yeah.
Because the industry didn't exist.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we are doing. The industry does exist, but there is no formal qualification for what we do. And we are starting to put that in place. And we won't be the only people who do that. But it's important for us to do it with an accredited university rather than just doing it ourselves, because it has much more value. Well, we are already doing it ourselves, but to actually get it accredited by an academic institution is very important. And we won't be the only people who do this, and we might not even be the first people who do it. But that is a legacy, and it's that makes me sound like I'm like getting the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Oscars. But it is, how many people can say they did that with their career? And I maybe I say that because I did go to a quote unquote good university, and I did do a quote unquote difficult degree, blah 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 blah, and lots of people could look at what I do and think, well, you're just cooking a few things and buttering bread. It's like, well, yeah, there is that, and I clean out the bins, and I do this and I do that. However, I am doing something no one else is doing.
Exactly. I think that's kind of one of those things where you need to ask yourself what are you doing it for, but then also what you're gonna get fulfillment in the short term, mid-term, and long term, and then also what do you want your predecessor, your staff, your kids, your parents, your friends, your family, people who knew you, to remember you by if you died tomorrow, right? Like, not saying that obviously you're going to die tomorrow, but if you did, what would you want people to remember you by? What would people be able to attach to what you did, right? What does your name mean, right? Is basically the concept there, right? And I think for me it's really important to understand that and be okay with, if you don't understand that, to be okay with not understanding that yet, and to just appreciate that you're maybe not in the right space, you haven't had the right experience, you haven't talked to the right person, you haven't, whatever it may be, to then be in the position where you know what you want to do. I was quite lucky in the respect of I found what I was really, really passionate about very, very young. Very, very young. I was like 12, 13 at the time, right? When I actually found it.
Did you know that you'd found it at the time?
No. I was like, well, this is fun, I'll just do this because it's fun. And I just did it and did it and did it and did it and did it. And it grew and it changed and it tweaked and it became something different. But what I know now looking back is I found what would lead on and would lead me into the positions to allow me to become the person I am today. And the decisions I am making now are what are going to allow me to become the person I am going to be in 6 months to a year to 5 years to 10 years, etc.
Yeah, I completely hear you. And do you think that I don't really know how to ask this question. Not because it's treading on your toes, but to actually define my thought. Do you think that would you say that when you are doing all the faceted elements of your job that it brings you alive, and it lights you up, and it brings the parts of your personality that you most enjoy to the fore.
Yeah, absolutely, but not every day. It does, but not all the time, right? Like, and I think that, the reason why I mention that and the reason why I say that is because I think there's sometimes a misconception when it comes to, you work for yourself, you love what you do, you must be happy, you must be fired up, you must be this all the time, right? The reality of the fact is, when you do it for long enough, there'll be days where you wake up and go, you know, the idea of editing a video, or the idea of filming a video, or even thinking about filming a video is just not what I want to do today or tomorrow, etc.
But I think that is because you and I, so I have days like that as well. It's like I've got to drive up the M6 again, or I've got to drive down the M6 again, and I'm like, I'm over this. And as I'm driving down the M6, or whichever way I'm driving, I can imagine myself in the reverse doing the journey opposite, because I know it's only a matter of time before I'm doing the journey opposite, and it's just like, I'm going up here to come down, I'm doing this to go there, and it's just like, this is a waste of my life, but it has to be done. But I think if you had a job that you detested, you would happily swap that for one of the horrible days, well, not horrible, one of the days you're not enjoying doing.
Oh yeah, 100%, because I did.
Because our framework of good and bad and happy and unhappy are so elevated that we are still high. Like, so a rubbish day, one of your rubbish days and one of my rubbish days are still better than the best days of doing a job that you would hate, that you would just drive you insane. But because we're living in a world of basically doing what, well, the outside world looks at us and think, you're doing what you want. It's like, yeah, well, no, not entirely, but yes, if you want to believe that, yes. That, so we live in a world that is much happier.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to that, and I was talking to my coach about this last week and the week before. It's about the leveling up process, right? Whenever you're in a situation where it's down to you, it's the responsibility is down to you, you run your own business, etc., you're then in a position where you're forced to push yourself outside your comfort zone, because that's what the business needs you to do, right?
Agree.
So it becomes second nature to you doing that, because that's how you grew the business from where it was and where it is. And it may feel like on most days or some days that you're not pushing forward. Oh, I haven't been as optimal today, or I haven't done as much as I thought I would, or oh, I've got that project to finish, or I've got to go there and drive there, or whatever it is. Oh, I've got to wake up early tomorrow, etc., etc., etc. But what we forget is our comfort zone now was our, oh my God, this is terrifying, I'm outside my comfort zone 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But because we don't feel it, we're so used to pushing those boundaries, we're so used to pushing ourselves outside of it now.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I really noticed now. So the podcast listeners, because there's no image to this, might not have picked up on the fact that there's a big difference in age between you and me. I don't know how many decades, but 2, I'm guessing, maybe more. 3, probably 2.5, 3. And so my peers, some of them are still doing really quite kind of low-level jobs. And good for them, they live their lives entirely outside work. You know, they are climbing mountains, they're doing this, they're doing that. But their actual job is really, you know, quite,
could be described as dull and boring to some people.
Yeah, but then that's what they've chosen to do. And when you talk to those people, they're just the way that they can express an idea, the way that they kind of interact with you doesn't seem to be as intricate in terms of the ideas that they express as people who have more high-powered jobs. And this is not a class, this is not an intelligence, this is not anything to do with any of those things. It's the way that when you talk to people who have their own businesses or quite high-powered jobs, and the way they can clarify an idea and jump from one idea to the next is like, oh, I've got to keep up now. Oh yeah, that's interesting. And you kind of like, it's a not sparring, but it's like covering loads of different things, loads of different ideas, and like, oh, what was that you said? That sounds interesting. Can we go down that alley? What's that? Whereas when you talk to people who don't have jobs that are really pushing them, or don't have businesses where it's all just, a lot is going on in their minds all the time, then the conversations that those people tend to have are about things that have been on the television. And I'm like, I don't even have a television to know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I wouldn't know, because I literally don't have the time. This is not me being an elitist arsehole. I don't have the time.
I don't know how people have the time to watch television. I don't get that. I think they probably don't drive up and down the M6 as often as I do when they're watching television. Or, I mean, if I've got an hour to myself, I'll go and have a bath or go for a walk. And the idea of like, let's sit in front of something and watch somebody do something, I'm just like, I don't really know. I don't really get that. But anyway, so I think that the more, so, your idea about comfort zones, the people with more demanding jobs are pushing themselves out of their comfort zone regularly. And so they're just more fun to be around.
Because they're also, I think, more open to be like, I have no idea how terrifying, how difficult, or how challenging this idea or concept you have. Like, for example, if you're saying to me, let's go skydiving, I'd be like, sure, why not jump out of a plane? What possibly could go wrong?
Yeah, no,
I'm using quite an obvious, stupid example, but you get the principle.
Yeah, no,
right?
Yeah, no, I do have some red lines. That's one of them.
Yeah, but I think the point is taking a concept that's completely out of left field and going, would you be up for doing that, for example? Or, oh, so-and-so's friend is coming to drinks or whatever it is, and some people are like, well, that, people get annoyed by that, and other people will be going, great, fabulous, wonderful, I look forward to finding out who the hell they are.
Well, this is the question of like, this is not so-and-so who used to be a heroin dealer, is it? I don't want to go for drinks with them. It's all the same to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And we could talk forever, and we do normally, but at some point we need to end this podcast, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, let's.
So let me like kind of close it normally how I close it. I know you've asked me a couple of questions, but I want to throw it in anyway. Do you have a final topic? Do you have a question specifically you want to ask me? Because I think sometimes when people get interviewed or etc., I've had it, others have had it, and that's why I added it into the podcast, is people, they kind of like are burning to ask a question. I don't like leaving people hanging. You may not have one, but do you have one?
What question I want you to ask me, or a question I want to ask you?
You want to ask me a question.
Okay. What's your biggest current challenge?
To continue spinning all the plates that it requires to run a production company in the middle of a pandemic, if I'm being completely honest. Now, let me slightly depack that. A lot of my work at the moment is because I've made a choice, and because of the goals I have, is to build more of an agency looking company, which means it's actually less about video production and more about business, management, and people skills. It's actually that communication aspect. How do we do a job? How do we treat a client, etc.? How do we obtain a client, and so on? All of those development aspects of a business. And for me, that's the things that for a long time I wasn't interested in. But as I did it more, I kind of, I guess, found it quite addictive to learn about business and learn about entrepreneurship and learn about, quote-unquote, perceived success, right? It's not a monetary success in that respect specifically. It's a fulfillment level of success for me. And it's one of those things where I think all the plates I have spinning is because I'm pushing myself to do bigger projects, to take the company higher, to grow the company, to continue to keep the company being profitable during a time when arguably some company, but the majority of companies in general shouldn't be successful and shouldn't be profitable, and you know the odds are against you as a business owner, to be honest with you, right?
Oh no, there's always business to be done. You can
No,
in
of
the middle
course.
of a war and there'll be business to be done.
Oh no, there is, but like if you just look at the pure numbers, you are probability chance wise, you're going to fail. Probability chance wise, and if there's other things like a pandemic, a war, etc., a recession, so on and so on, from what I've heard, I don't know because I haven't had to work through one or live through one. It becomes even harder. So even less businesses are end up being profitable and successful.
Yeah, but it does depend on mindset, doesn't it? That you can go, oh, it's all too hard. Or you can go, right, well, what we're going to have to do is something different. Or we're going to have to, it's, if you're, I think, this is why I think it's quite a good thing that this pandemic has happened to, like, for your business and for my business now. Because if you were Marks and Spencer's or ITV or whatever, that's much more of a headache. When you are a few people, an individual, you can make decisions. You don't have to have board meetings. You don't have to discuss anything with shareholders. You can change your mind in a positive way, not like in a flippant way. You can pivot, as the expression is, as much as you like. Whereas if you're a behemoth, then you can't. I mean, imagine being a railway. What do you do if people aren't allowed to travel? Oh, right, okay. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to become fairies. We're going to host picnics. Well, that's not going to work either. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think one of the main things for me, and sorry to cut you off, but the main thing that I took from a very good friend and someone who I've met a long time ago, who I'm due to catch up with hopefully, and he said, in challenging times, in recessions, in pandemics, in wars, etc., it's not businesses that adapt and change, it's business owners. It's the mindset of those people. It's those people who are the reason why that business survives. It's not the business itself, right? Because the business, at the end of the day, has a owner of some description. Whether it's multiple people, as you grow the company, right? As in multiple CEOs or managing directors or MDs or whatever. But the reality of the fact is there's a certain number of people, or one or two people or three people, who make every decision. And every decision has to go through, right, to grow the company or etc.
No, there shouldn't. It shouldn't be like that in a business. There should be a whole level of decisions that happen, which are, so spending, for example, that should be, anyone can spend, £1,000. And that's absolutely fine. Another certain level, they can spend £5,000 without getting any sign off with any this or that. At the end of the month, they have to justify it. But there's not like, oh, well, I've got to ring up 4 different people before I can spend £1,000.
No. Of course, it's more the big decisions, right? It's we're going to change our direction decisions. It's we're going to go from being a video production company, in my case, to a web development company, for example.
But I'm lucky that I have a great team of people that I work with. And loads of things happen and I don't know about them. And I'm quite happy about that. Sometimes I'm unhappy and I say I'm unhappy about that decision. And it's like, well, I thought it was okay to make it. Well, you are okay to make it, but something like that next time, can you just ask me or just pass it in front of me before it actually happens, please?
Yeah, and just ask my opinion on it, and this is how we should tackle it, etc. And I do the same with the, I work with the Racing team now, and it's exactly the same thing. We've had situations on podcasts, or we've had situations in videos, etc., where they've made a call, which is fine because I've told them to make that call. But then I'm like, actually, in future, can we this is how we remedy this problem now. I'm not annoyed at you for making that decision because you're doing what I just asked you to do, right? You're just respecting my wishes in respect to I asked you to make those decisions, etc., etc. But the difference, I think, is then saying, okay, well, in this case, this is the new, when you realise there's a problem in that process, you can then go as a leader, you can go, actually, for these specific scenarios, it would be great to know so I can help you make the best decision for the company. Because I maybe have more experience, or I have there's a thousand different
basically,
reasons.
None of us know what to do in this particular incident. Let's all talk about it. I do that a lot. I don't know. I mean, I've got an inclination about what I think should happen, but I'm not going to like make it into a big decision. I'm not going to decide. I'm going to get other people involved, and if they are all thinking the same thing that I'm kind of thinking, then yes, let's do it like that. And if everyone is like dead against it, no, you should go the opposite way to my inclination. I'm like, right, well, I hadn't made a proper decision. Everyone else thinks it's the other way. Let's do it like that. It's the point. Who knows? And you make the decision. No recriminations. Find out. I always think, it's one of my phrases, make lots of decisions. Some will be good, some will be bad, but make lots of decisions. Don't be angry about anything that happens. Make lots of decisions. And I mean, don't make the same decision multiple times, but something comes up, make a decision. It might be good, it might be bad. There's no way of knowing until 5 years later. Make decisions.
Yep. Yeah. And be ready for the consequences or etc. that will happen because of those decisions, and be able to quote unquote fix those and learn from those, right?
Well,
because
you make a decision. It's like driving through a city. You get to a roundabout, you don't know where to go. Well, we'll go left. Drive down that road a bit. Realise left wasn't the way to go. No need to be angry about any of it. Turn around, stop and ask people, go in another direction. Like, you just make decisions, because the worst thing you can do is not make a decision, keep on going around that roundabout, going round and round and round and round and round and round. That's a waste of everyone's time. The decision can be, let's stop and ask someone. It can be anything, but just make decisions. And then when you find yourself in a new situation, make another decision. Even if it was, let's go back, let's do it again. Just make decisions. Some will be good, some will be bad. Make a lot of decisions.
Absolutely. And for those people, and because I'm very conscious of time, so I think we should wrap it up. For those people who may be interested in seeing the stuff that you are able to share and you are sharing on social media and such, or maybe want to reach out to you, etc., for whatever reason, where's best for them to do that?
Okay, so I can be found on most forms of social media as Talk, Eat, Laugh, and primarily we're pumping stuff out on Instagram and Twitter, and then on LinkedIn. We are also down as Talk, Eat, Laugh, and I can be found on LinkedIn as Rachel Muse, M-U-S-E, like the band, or if you're not of that age, then like the goddess.
Fab. Thank you so much for your time, as always. It's always a pleasure. Is there any final thoughts or anything you want to leave off the podcast on?
Yeah, do it. There's plenty of time to undo it later. Just do it. Unless it's get pregnant. That is quite hard to undo. But anything else, just like do it. Like, yeah, make the decision, do it.
I love it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Have a nice evening.
Thank you ever so much, ladies and gents. I'm really, really glad that you obviously enjoyed the podcast enough to be here on the end. So thank you so much for joining me once again. I'll be back next week for a brand new episode. And it's going to be exciting because I don't even know which episode is coming next yet. So, yeah. Thank you so much for coming back. If you did enjoy this video and would like to see more like it, then make sure to be subscribed to the channel. I'll leave a link in the comments section down below. And, yeah. I'll see you very soon.